106.9 FM, serving St. Louis and the Metro East. We are WGNU, Granite City.
Every year, millions of Americans use opioids to manage pain. Pain can be unrelenting, overwhelming, and all-consuming. So why do so many of us try to manage pain only from the palm of our hands? Doctor-prescribed opioids are appropriate in some cases, but they just mask the pain. And reliance on opioids has led to the worst drug crisis in American history. That's why the CDC recommends safer alternatives, like physical therapy, to manage pain. Physical therapists treat pain through movement, hands-on care, and patient education. No warning labels required. And by increasing physical activity, you can also reduce your risk of other chronic diseases. Pain is personal, but treating pain takes teamwork. When it comes to your health, you have a choice. Choose more movement and better health. Choose physical therapy. Visit moveforwardpt.com to find a physical therapist in your area. This message is brought to you by the American Physical Therapy Association.
In Africa, 5-year-old Chiru has no choice. She and millions like her must walk miles every day for dirty water. But together, we can end their walk by providing clean water close by. Instead of spending hours walking to get water that makes them sick, girls can be in a classroom that expands their minds, and moms will gain back time to care for their families. Sons and daughters can grow up strong, finally free of sicknesses caused by dirty water. At World Vision, care about clean water runs deep. Deep enough to reach one new person with clean water every 10 seconds. It's every child, every person, everywhere serves clean water and the chance to rise to their full potential. It's true. When you just add water, you change a life. Learn more at worldvision.org.
Welcome to the new John Simmons Show. After years of battling a gambling addiction, John found a hope and a future for his life through Christ. He has spent the last several years encouraging others to find joy, peace, and hope in their lives by walking out God's plan for their lives. Now, John wants to help you find the passion, vision, and faith you need to start writing out God's sentence for your life and help you add to it every day. Phone lines are now open. Call or text 314-880-0808. Now, here is your host, the new John Simmons.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the new John Simmons Show, where you can find God's sentence for your life and become the new you, where we talk about finding passion, a vision, and faith in your walk with Christ so that your life can overflow with joy, peace, and hope today. Welcome to the program, everybody. I'm getting like on my own page here on Facebook Live. If you didn't know, we have a live stream available on the internet, on your phones, on your tablets, on your computers. Just search for the new John Simmons Show on Facebook. I'm joined here by my Friday companion, my confidant, our ministry partner, Mr. Kevin Eskew.
Good evening. Hello, everybody.
I'm excited that you're here tonight, Kevin. A couple things I wanted to bring up on the air tonight. Before we get started, and tonight's conversation is going to be about the obedience experiments, and we're going to talk a little psychology on tonight's show. I'm very excited about all of this because this is one of, we all have those things in life that we could talk about ad nauseum, right? Those special subjects, and it's not always the same thing for everybody. I know for you, biblically speaking, it's eschatology, and we talk about the end times, and you could talk about those sort of things,
right?
Without even thinking about it. 5 hours later, you're like, you're still going. And for me, sometimes that's all your conversation. Yes. But for me, one of those subjects is social obedience experiments, and so we're going to get into that tonight. I think it's very interesting stuff. If you've never heard about these before, they're going to blow your mind. I really think, the first time anybody hears about these things, you will go, that's made up.
That's really weird. That's really weird stuff.
So I'm very excited to talk about that later on the show. Two things that I want to get to, though. Two things that news and notes, if you would. Again, we'll get to the good stuff in a minute. This stuff is very personal to our ministry, and I'm very excited to bring it up, Kevin. The first one is that my favorite show on TV, Survivor, had its finale this week.
Yeah.
And 13 weeks ago, before the show started, you and me and another friend of ours, Survivor fans, we all picked who we thought the winner was going to be.
Yeah.
And over the course of the show, we've been able to continue to talk about that and make fun of each other as our picks got voted out. But guess whose pick didn't get voted out?
John.
I picked the winner of Survivor before the show started.
Yeah.
I just knew it in my heart. And Kevin, we've been talking about the spiritual gifts. I don't know if this lines itself up.
I don't think it does.
With one of these spiritual gifts, but the perceiver game of John Simmons is strong. I'm able to perceive the winner of Survivor months in advance. So, when I was betting sports, I didn't seem to have this sort of good luck.
No.
If you would even call it that. I don't believe in luck much anymore. But at the time, I would have, stepped over your grandma to get a winning bet in. And now here I have no money on the game of Survivor or its outcome, nor do I have any, real reason to care who wins other than it's just fun to have a conversation with your friends about something.
Yeah.
And so my winner got there, Mr. Wendell.
I know. It's
you'll never hear the end of it.
Oh, that's for sure. And integrity, we may have to knock out a wall just for John's head to fit in here comfortably as it continues to grow and swell. But yeah, you're right. I
like hearing those words.
You picked it. He did everything he could to lose, though. He really did put in his all to throw that game at the end. But he still squeaked out, and I mean squeaked out a winner.
He had my loving, good feelings, good vibes going towards my thoughts and prayers for out to Wendell this season on Survivor. Congratulations, you were my pick. I can't wait to do it again in the fall. If I pick winners back to back, Kevin, maybe you should start.
It'll be insufferable.
I
think the friendship may be over. Lord, please do not let him pick another win.
I'm difficult
2 winners in a row.
Yeah, I'm difficult to deal with when I'm winning, but it makes me enduring because.
Yeah. You are, though, a very gracious loser, though. When you do lose, you've always been that way. You don't really throw a fit or get mad, get angry. You get real quiet.
Yeah, I got really used to losing when I was gambling.
Yeah,
so it was I knew how people reacted badly to gambling losses, and I knew that I didn't want to be that.
Yeah.
And so
you weren't.
I internalized all of my losses.
You totally did. You were not one of those people that took like anger or blow up at like I would be. I was the opposite. I'd blow up all the time. But
and speaking of losses this week, number 2 before we get into our major conversation tonight, Kevin,
right?
That I wanted to talk to you about, and I don't know if our viewers are familiar. At least some of them I know will be. Jeremy, who's given us a like here on Facebook already, knows that the game HQ.
Yeah,
this is a trivia game that is on your app, either your Android or your iPhone. And over the last several months, this game has rose in prominence. So they have a couple games a day where you answer, either between 12 or 15 trivia questions.
And very tough questions.
Yeah, they can be. And so anybody who makes it all the way to the end, they share inside a prize pool, whatever it is for that specific game. It's as low as $1,000, and we've seen it as high as $250,000 on some of the games. A large, bucket of money available to people every single day if you're able to get.
And most people, the winners, there's usually a few hundred. So out of maybe 1 million that play, maybe a couple hundred win at the end, and they might win 50 cents to $1.
Yeah, but some people won a lot of money. They had a big, when they gave out a lot of that money, some people were like, there was 200 people won like 10 grand.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But
it's fun to play. I love trivia questions.
Yeah, and so before we got born again, Kevin, trivia was one of my big vices. We loved going out on Tuesday nights and playing trivia.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And now it translates into this app, and I fell in love with this app immediately. However, I became easily very frustrated. Because the app draws millions of contestants.
Right.
You're talking about
it's free.
Upwards of 1 million or 2 million people, depending on which night you're playing. And it's difficult to get through the end. And if you do now, because the field is so flooded, you share the pool with all of these people, and it's like cents, sometimes cents. Now, sometimes you can win a lot of money,
$10, $12.
But so I stopped playing for a while.
Yeah, I have. I've pretty much given up.
So the other night I turn it on. I'm so excited.
Okay.
And normally I think my record had been like 8 or 9 up to that point. And tonight's trivia questions were going up to 12, Kevin, and I made it all the way to number 11. Now, in 11, they do this big video thing, like we're about to do the last question, everyone who
here it comes, they build that up.
Everyone who gets this last question wins the money, and I'm like, we had just got done grocery shopping. I'm standing in my front yard. I'm very excited. No one's around.
You haven't even gone in the house.
I haven't even gone in the house. I don't want to jinx myself, right? And so question 12 pops up, and it's a question about the Golden Girls, Kevin.
You're kidding, and you missed that?
Yeah, because the Golden Girls was out of the 80s. My favorite show of all time.
All right. What was the question?
The question was which one of these directors made an appearance in the Golden Girls?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
Rob Reiner probably.
No.
I'm just guessing.
And they didn't even name the directors. They said the director of which of these movies. So not only did you have to know the person, but you had to know which movie they directed as well.
Oh yeah, that's tough. That's not a Golden Girls question. Well, that's just a crazy question. But okay.
So there's 3 choices. So I have a 33% chance of picking this correctly, without any knowledge of actually the answer.
Okay.
So I pick, and it is evenly split. Of the people who are left, a third.
Everyone's guessing at that point. You can pretty much tell. If it's evenly split, everyone's guessing.
And so my worst nightmare takes place, Kevin.
Yeah.
I get 11 questions right, get to the final question after hundreds of attempts, and I get it wrong. And I mean, you feel pressured because I haven't mentioned this yet. As you're going up the questions, and it gets harder and harder, and you're just like that anticipation, and am I going to lose? And it's very much like Game 7 buzzer beater sort of situation in my heart. It's beating real fast. The adrenaline's going, and for me to get there, I was just so upset, and I hadn't talked to you much about that yet, and I know that we were playing that together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a worst case scenario. Or winning, and we talked about that too. Or getting the finally 1 out of 100-something attempts, you finally get all 12 right, and you win like 10 cents.
Yeah.
Or,
I do have
everyone else.
I do have to say
all 12 right.
that the winners that night got less than $1 a piece.
Yeah.
So that's what I lost was like 90 cents or whatever it was.
But it's just this. It's not about the money. It's the satisfaction. It's like of getting and being able to say, "Hey, I got all 12 of these right," because it is monumentally difficult in my opinion. Difficult. It's especially when you're doing it by yourself. You don't have, you're not doing it with a group of friends.
There's no Google.
They don't give you enough time. I mean, it's designed. You've got literally like 5 seconds after they read the question to pick an answer.
Yeah.
And what's even more brutal is that if you pick, you can't change your mind. Yeah. Once you've locked in, you're locked in.
So if you accidentally press a button,
there's so many ways to go wrong.
Locked in.
So many ways to go wrong.
Here's my plan for our show, Kevin. If we can just start giving away money every night, we can have millions of viewers.
That's true.
Millions.
We get a lot.
Integrity. We can start paying Integrity. He doesn't have to go on tour anymore. He's just going to come work for us because we got 2 million people every night.
Yeah.
And
we just need
playing trivia.
Yeah.
Talking about every question would be about Jesus. Teach everybody about Jesus while giving out some money.
We should do a Bible trivia thing one Friday night or something.
Yeah, that'd be exciting.
Yeah.
I can't see what the screen says.
Integrity could ask the questions, I think, and then you and I can go up against it and see who wins. Integrity, he's nodding his head. Yes, I think he's in.
Yes. All right, so Kevin, that's going to do it for our random conversations to start the show. Can you move this computer screen here in front of us? I know so I can't see what it says, and I know Integrity's trying to talk to us, and I need to know what's going on, and everything's sort of wonky over here. But until then, guys, I want to talk to you about the conversation of the day. Now I've got Kevin doing too much work, and it's okay. Just leave it alone. This is great radio, by the way. So once we give away all the money. Amen, by the way, Integrity said. Finally, once we start giving away all the money, we could do stuff like this, and everybody will still keep watching.
That's right.
The host of the HQ show is not the world's most,
Yeah.
What's the word when you're really good at something? He's not the best. Anyway.
MC.
We've lost the rails here.
If you like behind the scenes stuff, that's what's so awesome about YouTube and doing live video is that you can Yeah, if you've been a long time listener, you love talk radio, you love AM, which is what we're on. Obviously, you can kind of see what it looks like behind the scenes, and it's not always. It may sound smooth, but it not always is, and so you got to multitask sometimes.
New John Simmons here with Kevin Eskew, Integrity's Behind the Glass. I want to switch gears here, guys, and I want to get into our conversation of the day, talking about the obedience experiments and a little psychology. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I don't know, Kevin, the very first time that I heard about these things, but I just remember being fascinated. I know that it was in when I was dealing at River City. I remember that it was in that stage of my life because I remember talking to everybody I worked with about it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it was a movie I saw. I'm pretty sure that it was a Dateline thing. Because Dateline, of course, and all our listeners know that Dateline's one of my favorite shows.
You've been watching Dateline that long?
I've been watching Dateline for...
Oh, you're a big Dateline. I mean, this dates back, huh?
Date back, probably even before I met you. I've been watching Dateline.
Oh, my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Dateline is my favorite show. It's been there.
No, I knew that, but I didn't know it has been that long running in your history.
And so Dateline did this, story on this terrible... tragic event that took place where a guy, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, a guy called into a McDonald's, and while he was on the phone, he got people who worked there to do insane acts, simply by saying and posing as the police, and getting them to do things that they normally wouldn't do, if just asked by someone off the street. But
common sense would say this is not right.
And nonetheless, these people were doing things that you would say, how on earth would you possibly do that? And as I was watching this episode of Dateline or whatever news show it was I was watching, might have been 48 Hours, and I was just like, there's no way. As I'm hearing the story, there was like, there is no way that I would do what these people were doing. Yeah. And they talked about in this episode of the TV show, they talked about this thing called the Milgram experiment. Okay. And they said that it was like this, in the sense that psychologists from the 60s coined this term obedience to authority, and did a number of experiments to sort of prove that when asked by an authoritative figure, humans have a tendency to follow it, even if it goes against either common sense or things that we would normally do under, our own situations where we're not being led by an authoritative figure. Mm-hmm. And so I went and I read about these Milgram experiments, Kevin. And this is when my mind just exploded. Okay. With it's such intense, like those things where you're just like, there's no way that's true. That it's like seeing Bigfoot. It's like if I told you, Kevin, today that Bigfoot's been proven. Okay,
right.
You would go, "There's no way that's true. There's no way Bigfoot's been proven." But if if you lay the evidence down in front of someone, and Bigfoot shows up in the room, and you're like, "Oh wait, he is real." That's so I can't believe. Your mind explodes. Like the emoji. Right. And so my mind exploded when I realized that this was absolutely true. And there's several studies, several experiments, and several other mainstream news stories that have come out where people are doing things they normally wouldn't do simply because they were asked to by authority.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly where to start with this conversation. We've got a couple places that I want to go to. Okay. Should I explain the Milgram experiment first, and maybe we'll get into some of the things that I'm talking about that have blown my mind? Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what the Milgram experiment. Nintendo, you know what this is? All right, so at least we're going to be sharing this with one person tonight. So here's what the Milgram experiment is, okay? So
prepare for your mind to be blown.
Yeah, so we've got some people listening on Facebook. So if you've never heard of the Milgram experiment, it's this. It's a series of social psychology experiments that were conducted at Yale University by a Jewish psychologist named Stanley Milgram, okay? Mm-hmm. And he set up these experiments at Yale. They were funded by the university, where he had the experimentee, or whatever the word is, would come into a room, and everyone else was involved with the experiment.
The subject, I think.
Yeah, the subject.
They call him the subject.
Okay, so the subject comes into a room, and he's there with another person who's posing as another subject, but he's actually part of the experiment. Uh-huh. Okay, so there's two main individuals here, and they are told that they are going to be either a learner or a teacher. Okay, you're a learner or a teacher, and so the experiment is set up so that the subject is always the teacher.
Yeah, they say like pick a hand. They act like there's two pieces of paper, one that says teacher, one that says subject, and they say pick a hand and make it look random, like this is what you're going to be. But no matter which hand they pick, they're always going to be the teacher. It's just designed where they don't know that, but it doesn't matter what hand they pick. It's always going to be heads.
Absolutely. So they separate the two men, and they say that they're going to give the subject a list of words, and he's going to repeat these list of words to the other person, the other subject, who he thinks is the other subject. Mm-hmm. And every time the guy doesn't get the corresponding word correct, so if I say bird, he's supposed to say stone, or whatever the list is of the words. Yeah. Okay, and so let's just say he gets it wrong, he's going to get an electric shock.
Yeah.
And so the subject, they also strap something to his arm, and they give him a shock to let him know what it feels like. Okay, yeah. And so in front of the learner now, in front of the subject, is a series of switches. I know this is hard to take in, visually, but just imagine a computer or a box with a bunch of switches on it, each labeled with a different amount of voltage. And so you keep saying these words, and every time the person on the other side of the wall gets it wrong, you have to flip the switch and give them a buzz. And as they get it wrong, and you continually give them an increasing dose of electric volts, you hear the person in the other room going, "Ah! Stop it!" and banging on the table and asking for this to stop. And then you, as the subject, or as the teacher, as they're called in the experiment, is in the room with another person. They're like, "Hey, this guy's getting hurt in there. We need to check on him."
Yeah.
And the person who's behind them with the clipboard is like, "No, you need to keep going, teacher. Just continue to give them the shocks."
Right.
And the person continues to do it because the person in authority has asked them to keep going. And even when they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I should be doing this," and they're like, "Who's taking responsibility for this guy being
what if
shocked?
I kill them?
What if I kill him? Yeah. What if I kill him?" And then all of a sudden the authority figure is just like, "No, continue to go." And so it turns out over the course of this experiment, thousands of people administered what would have been a lethal dose of electric shock because they were asked to do it.
Yeah.
And the other person was not actually being shocked, by the way. I need to add that part to it. They were just pretending in another room.
They didn't know that. Right. And to explain even more, when they first do it, like the fake subject, he's an actor, and he's not even hooked up to anything, but they don't know it. They'll get a few questions right. And so they're supposed to gauge negative reinforcement, like will they learn better? And the first shock is just a small amount. And then if they get the next question wrong, the shock goes up a little bit more intensely. So when John talks about by the end of the experiment, the fake guy, the guy that's pretending to be learning, he's gotten so many questions wrong now that the last switch is like massive dose of punishment. And that's where it gets more stressful for this. We call it the teacher, but he's the subject. It's the whole thing is to gauge his response to how he handles the added pressure that each time this poor guy keeps getting a question wrong, this shock gets more and more severe, and they get more and more uncomfortable as this process goes on. So when it first starts, it seems pretty innocent. It's just a little zap, no big deal, all fun and games. Let's move on to the next question. But as it progresses, they realize, oh my gosh, this person's really suffering. Yeah, and I got to do it again.
And so this experiment was done to thousands of people, most of whom went through with the idea that they were shocking the person maybe to death because they would stop answering at some point.
Yeah.
And it was a whole thing. There's a movie on Netflix about it called The Experimenter, and you can also read about this all over the internet. Just search for it. Mm-hmm. And there's been other movies that have been based on this. The idea I need to get you real quick before we take our break is that Stanley Milgram, the guy who created this experiment, he did so to try and wrap his mind around the Holocaust. He was a Jewish, I don't know if his parents were in the Holocaust or what his involvement with wasn't, but he had this, he couldn't wrap his mind around how the German soldiers who were part of, leading people leading people into the gas chamber and all the Jewish deaths and murders that took place during World War II, how they could wrap their mind around doing it basically by saying, I'm being ordered to. How could they commit murder? How could they commit genocide? Simply because they were under orders.
Because a lot of these, after the war was over, a lot of these SS soldiers and the people that were running these concentration camps were interviewed and interrogated. And how could you stand there and watch, thousands of people a day go into gas chambers or die, and their reasoning was, well, we were ordered to.
Yeah, and so this is what the experiment figured out, and it's blown my mind ever since. When we come back, we're going to share some more experiments that have taken place in the time since this. Again, these experiments are nuts in the results. And so, Kevin Eskew, New John Simmons, Integrity here with you. Don't go away. You're listening to the New John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network. (239-4149) or visit faithfully.fit for more information. Faithfully Fit can also hold classes at your church or school. Don't delay. Contact Faithfully Fit, where they hope to strengthen your body and your relationship with Christ. Call 314-239-4149.
Testimony House Ministries is the proud sponsor of the New John Simmons Show. We're so thankful for all of you who tuned into the show, watch us live on Facebook or our YouTube channel. Without all of you, the New John Simmons Show and all the other Testimony House Network shows would not be possible. Please visit newjohnsimmons.com today and click the Partner with Us tab to help us continue sharing our message of the future and a hope in Christ with others. God bless. Are you interested in learning more about finding God's sons for your life? At newjohnsimmons.com, there are articles and videos describing how you can begin to write God's sentence for your life by finding passion, vision, and faith. In addition, newjohnsimmons.com has a variety of ways for you to be encouraged to continue writing God's sentence. As always, you can hear the show live weekdays at 9 p.m. Central Time by clicking the Listen Live button when you visit newjohnsimmons.com.
Hey everybody, New John Simmons here with you. Back in 2012, I found myself at the end of my rope for what seemed like the 100th time. I cried out to God and said, God, if you're real, I need you to show me a future and a hope for my life. What happened next changed my life forever. It took me out of my life where I was a gambling addict who had lost over $500,000, allowed me to begin a new life in Christ, where I found more joy, peace, and hope than I ever knew existed. I share the stories, including where I blame God for my father's death and the call into ministry that I found in my first book called Finding Faith. I also share with you the answers to the questions that I was asking God about what is faith and how can I move mountains with it. Finding Faith has those stories and so much more. I absolutely believe it can encourage you to find faith in your life today. Finding Faith by me, the New John Simmons, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble website, Walmart. You can also pick up a copy signed by me over at newjohnsimmons.com.
Sports and entertainment, business and politics, health and wellness, all on WGNU, the talk of St. Louis.
The New John Simmons Show is part of the Testimony House Network. To learn more about the network or to watch other network programs, please visit testimonyhouse.org. Now, here's the New John Simmons.
All your promises are yes and amen. All your promises are yes and amen.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. New John Simmons here with you alongside Kevin Eskew, talking about the obedience experiments on tonight's show, talking about some psychology issues, to be able to give you a little excitement going into your weekend. Because this stuff, Kevin, that we're talking about, we'll continue to talk about, this stuff, for whatever reason, I can't pinpoint it, why I'm so fascinated by it. but this idea that we follow authority blindly in some situations, to me, is just incredibly difficult to wrap my head around logically. Watching some of these experiments, and you think, there's no way I would do that. And then I see another experiment, and I would say, well, there's no way I would do that. But people are continually doing things, and if I was put in one of these situations, I'm sure I would be like many of these other people. I want to say, well, I wouldn't shock the guy to death, but that would put me in the minority of people who didn't do those things.
Yeah, you use the words like follow, obey, and like follow or obey blindly. And I really, and this is just me, I really see it differently. I really think I see it as, and maybe it's my personality, maybe it's how I was raised. I don't see it as like when somebody asks me to do something or somebody tells me to do something, that I don't think of myself as I'm obeying as much as I feel like I'm caving or submitting. I feel like my arms being like, because there's a lot of times we do things and it almost feels like our that expression, oh, you twist my arm, I'll go ahead and do this. A lot in me, because of I rebel. Like, I want to rebel. It's our nature to rebel against authority. We're really actually very rebellious in nature and in our flesh. So it's really, to me, when I do something I really don't want to do, I really feel more like I've knuckled under, or I'm submitting more than I am blindly obeying. Does that make sense? Yeah, I get your point, and I don't think that we're that far off in our description. Maybe just using different wordage. It's a different emotional state or a different state of mind than where I do something because I recognize that you are in a higher authority, so I'm going to be obedient to that. It's or the emotional or mindset of mind. Well, I really don't want to listen to you. I really would rather do something else, but I will submit to your authority. You know what I mean? Well, I think that, what these obedience experiments have shown us is that there doesn't necessarily have to be an authority figure involved for us to be doing something without really, knowing why, essentially, or realizing what we're doing. I want to go over some of these other social experiments that I've seen and just discuss them, briefly, how they each maybe portray this idea that, are we doing what we want to do, or are we following someone else, or, these sorts of, linear thoughts. Yeah. So the first one I want to talk about is this Luke in the Sky experiment. Now, Stanley Milgram, who did the first experiment we talked about in the first segment, he also did this experiment where he had a student from Yale go and stand in the middle of a very public street in New York City and just look up at the sky. Yeah. To see if other people would also look into the sky. And they did this in different areas and in different cities. And there's nothing in the sky. There's nothing they're looking at, but just, hey, go stand there and look up in the sky. Yeah. And they did it. For like 5 minutes, until people walk by and look up with them. And then all of a sudden, they've got this stuff on videotape where hundreds of people are all looking in the sky at nothing. There's nothing there. Yeah. There's hundreds of people all in a circle, all looking up in the sky, like it's the greatest thing, like something great. Superman is flying over the tower or something, and eventually the person who's starring it even walks away. Yeah, that's the best part. Is after they get like 10 or 15 people around them looking up, the instigator then looks back down and just walks away. Yeah, and the others remain standing there looking up. And so eventually you'll have all these people, hundreds or maybe thousands of people, look up into the sky, and no one's told them to do that. No one's even there and knows why they're doing it. There's only one person involved in this in this experiment. And to me, it's like, would we be doing that? Yeah. I would do it. I would look up in the sky. Oh, absolutely, I would. I would probably whisper, like, what are we looking at? The person next to you obviously wouldn't know. Of course not. So we keep looking. I guess we'll figure it out when we see it. Yeah. Let's talk about another one. The sheet of paper on the lines. This is an experiment that took place around the same time. This is Stanley Milgram's teacher. One of his teachers came up with this experiment where they set a number of individuals at a table, and they showed them a series of pieces of paper. And on each sheet of paper, there are 3 lines on one side and 1 line on the other. And 1 line matches the size of the other 3. Right. And so the 3 lines are all different lengths. Yes. And then there's the one off to the left or right, whichever way you're looking at it. So they begin to ask the subjects, which one, what does the first line, which one does it match? Yeah. And there's a clear, obvious answer. It's the first one, second one, or third one. It matches the second one. Correct.
And so they would ask everybody in the line, subject 1, 2, 3, and they go down the line, and they'd all get it correct, every single one of them. And they'd ask them 4 or 5 times, and then all of a sudden they would ask again the 6th or 7th time, and they would answer incorrectly except for the one person who's the actual subject. Everyone else. So
there's like 5 sitting at a table, and 4 of them are all plants.
Yes.
And the 5th person doesn't know it.
Correct.
And so person number 1, 2, 3, and 4 all answer incorrectly on purpose, knowing that they're lying.
Knowing that they're
saying it's number 2, but it's not.
Yes.
And then number 5,
the guy who
agrees with the first 4 and says, "Yeah, it's number 2."
So if there's a clear and obvious answer to the right in front of him, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the planet to get this answer right.
Yeah.
But just hearing your neighbors.
Yeah.
You're following their example because you don't want to stick out. I don't know. There's probably all sorts of reasons why you do this.
Yeah.
For men, we crave honor. If we think we're going to stand out in a crowd and not get the honor, we won't do something. We won't stand up in front of other people usually unless we feel like something good is going to come out of it.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely think that there could be something behind that. But also I think, who knows? But sure. I think it's the fear, the self-esteem, the fear of that. How can they, self-doubt? Like, what are they saying? Maybe I am wrong. I think that when just even the society pressures, they talk about peer pressure and things, and even something that maybe like when taking up smoking or something. Oh, well, all my friends are smoking. I know I'm not supposed to smoke, but they're all telling me it's okay. And all of a sudden what you know maybe in your gut is not the greatest habit to be picking up. You do it anyway, so you fit in.
Yeah.
And then maybe this person they wanted to fit in. Like these 4 are saying the wrong answer. Maybe I missed the instructions. Maybe I'm not getting something. Surely all 4 of these can't possibly be wrong.
Right.
And so I could see that our minds, just reeling, because that's just so unusual. It's so they're picking scenarios like the lady looking up in the sky. We talked about this. We would all do it because it's the way we're pro. If somebody's staring at something or in a certain direction, our whole lives know that they're looking at something. There's something over there, like either some crazy accident or some maybe an incredibly attractive person. Who knows what's going on? But there's a train wreck over there. Everyone's watching it, and I got to see it too. Which is human nature. But with that, it's a level of expectation, and so when they see someone staring up the sky, they already immediately have this spirit of expectation on them that there's something up there. No way in our normal mind and experiment would we walk by and see somebody staring in the sky and think to ourselves, well, that's an idiot. They're just looking at nothing. Like that would never occur to us.
Right. That's why it's fascinating.
Right.
Because we still do it, even though he is looking at nothing.
Yeah.
And so for me, obviously, we've shared some of these examples. There's even further ones. Earlier in the show, I said we bring up sort of a tragic incident that happened. I'm not going to bring that up. And you can go look this up yourself. Yeah. There's a movie about it named Compliance. You can also look up the Stanford prison experiments. These are very dark, dives into this social experiments that they did. And negative things have come out of this. But I want to get into the positive aspect of this. And I also just want to have a discussion as Christians here on tonight's show, talking about submitting to authority. Obviously, we're under God's authority. We're supposed to submit to it. So I want to pose some questions and some thoughts as we continue the rest of the show and try and, I don't know if we need to come to a complete consensus answer on this, but I want to bring it out in the air because when I think of this now as a Christian, like I learned these things prior to Christ. And as a Christian, especially as a Christian perceiver, which is my motivational gift. And so part of my gift is that I see things in black and white. And so when I see maybe this experiment and I'm just like, well, you're supposed to do this, but you do something different. Maybe that's why I'm so attracted to it. It's like, it's completely opposite of my way of thinking. And maybe I'm just interested in understanding the opposite way of thinking. And so for me as a Christian, as a new believer, a new creation, when I see this and I think, well, why can't we as believers submit in the same way that we do when someone's looking in the sky and all of a sudden we're following up? Why can't we submit in the same way that the people in the Milgram experiment did? So I don't know the answer to that. So let me go down some of these thoughts. Stanley Milgram had a couple thoughts that I wanted to bring into the conversation, Kevin.
Okay.
The first one is this, is that Stanley Milgram says that human nature can be studied but not escaped, especially your own. Basically saying that, even though we're in a situation where we, like the Milgram experiment, where you if the authority person wasn't telling you to keep going, there's no way you would keep going. You're not going to keep buzzing the guy, and shocking him.
The guy screaming, hey, stop, I can't take it anymore. Your inclination would be, I need to quit shocking this person. We need to stop what we're doing.
Yeah, and so we can't escape this idea that we want to stop doing it. But when pressed under authority, we continue to do it. Mm-hmm. And this is the fascinating, the thing to me. So he goes on to say that obedience, especially in these experiments, they lead to either continued positive or negative behavior. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, if the authority person is asking you to do something good, you're going to continue to do the good thing. Mm-hmm. But also in the same breath, they ask you to do something wrong. The behavior is not limited to negative behavior. Obedience from authority can also be addressed in a positive way. In the same way, like, your teacher at school might continue to encourage you to, do your lowercase a's better or something like that. Over and over again, continue that authority figure asking you to do something.
Yeah, it's, and I'm trying to wrap my mind about the whole obedience and submission, because I'm even thinking like, stoplights. Like we talk about obeying traffic lights. When I come up to a stoplight, like I'll stop. Why? It's not that I don't feel like I'm submitting to that stoplight.
Right.
I'm obeying it because I understand what it's asking me to do, or I understand the rules.
That's a good thought.
I know that, look, there's a benefit. I know if I disobey this traffic law, I could very well put myself and my car in danger here, and I don't want that. So I'm going to obey it because there's a benefit to it. My own there's a personal gain I'm getting from this. But when, like, an experiment of shocking someone, like at the beginning, see, this is my whole thing that they don't bring up, and I see it, is that the people that go into this, they're told, look, come on, we're going to do an experiment on teaching and how, negative reinforcement helps teaching. Now, that's a total lie. The only thing that was truthful when they tell this poor person is that there's an experiment going on. They're not told that we're going to experiment how you handle authority.
Right.
And so, but they already know, all right, I am submitting to the experiment. I'm going to come in and I'm going to allow you. It's like going into a job. We talk about job. We submit to authority. A lot of times I don't think there's not a person alive that hasn't gone into work and have had issues with a boss or a manager that asks them to do something or gives them a new task that's maybe not even a part of their job description, and they're not happy about it. Or we don't want to be there, or I don't want to do this thing. But we know, look, the consequence if we disobey, as you might call it, or not submit, as I would put that, there's a pressure there. My flesh tells me I just tell this guy to go take a hike.
And my coworkers are doing it.
Yeah, my coworkers are all behaving, and they're offering me maybe a bonus. Well, I guess, but your heart might not be into it. Like, I see this, like, your obedience is more your heart's into it. That's why I think that even God loves obedience, because to me, when you obey God, your heart's into it.
Right, but it's sort of like Jewish law before. We're obeying for the sake of obeying.
Yeah, if you're obeying just for the wrong meant, there's no fruit in that, and I really don't believe that you'll eventually be submission, because just like the traffic lights, like we obey them because we see a benefit and we appreciate them because they're for our safety. We don't really curse the red light. We may be mad that we ran into the red light.
I had a friend's dad once who said those are merely suggestions, by the way.
right. Some people drive that way.
Yeah.
But you get the idea. But where we don't like it, we feel pressure that we want to do the opposite now, and we still do the right thing. It's really more of a submission. But God wants you to, when he writes his word and says, these are my instructions for my people, when we do them out of, just like the traffic light, look, I'm excited about doing this because I know this is for my benefit, because I know God has something wonderful for me. So when I pray, get into the word, or do these things, or avoid the bad things, there's going to be I'm going to see fruit and a blessing in my life. So we obey them out of a cheerfulness, out of that, where when we're reading the word and we just do it but we're not happy and we submit. There's, you know what I mean? How long can you continue to do that?
Yeah,
that's why religion never works. Religion never works because it's about submission and it's about your heart is not in the right place, which is why people usually fall.
Yeah, it's about relationships. All of this stuff's about a relationship, whether it's the authority, the teacher, the learner, etc. I have a couple more thoughts. When we come back, we'll go over some of these extra thoughts that we have. Again, I could talk about this all day long, and so we've already run up against the clock here, but stay with us. A few more notes when we come back. You're listening to the new John Simmons Show alongside Kevin Eskew here today. Don't go away. Faithfully Fit and Wellness is St. Louis's all-new faith-based fitness program. Not only does Faithfully Fit want to see you shed pounds, but also wants to see you shed any other weight you've been carrying through Christ. Classes are filling up every morning during the week, so grab your spot in an individual class or an 8-week boot camp. Faithfully Fit offers classes in circuit training, drumstick fusion, cardio, and strength and personal training. Classes start at just $5, and the 8-week boot camp starts at $75. But wait, as a listener of the new John Simmons Show, Faithfully Fit is offering you a buy one, get one free boot camp when you mention this ad when signing up. That's 2 camps for the price of 1. You can bring a friend, split the cost, or have your second camp for free. Either way, this is a special offer only for show listeners. Sign up today by calling 314-239-4149 or visit faithfully.fit for more information. Faithfully Fit can also hold classes at your church or school. Don't delay. Contact Faithfully Fit, where they hope to strengthen your body and your relationship with Christ. Call 314-239-4149.
Testimony House Ministries is the proud sponsor of the new John Simmons Show. We are so thankful for all of you who tune into the show, watch us live on Facebook or our YouTube channel. Without all of you, the new John Simmons Show and all the other Testimony House Network shows would not be possible. Please visit newjohnsimmons.com today and click the Partner with Us tab to help us continue sharing our message of the future and a hope in Christ with others. God bless. Are you interested in learning more about finding God's sons for your life? At newjohnsimmons.com, there are articles and videos describing how you can begin to write God's sentence for your life by finding passion, vision, and faith. In addition, newjohnsimmons.com has a variety of ways for you to be encouraged to continue writing God's sentence. As always, you can hear the show live weekdays at 9 p.m. Central Time by clicking the Listen Live button when you visit newjohnsimmons.com.
Hey everybody, new John Simmons here with you. Back in 2012, I found myself at the end of my rope for what seemed like the 100th time. I cried out to God and said, God, if you're real, I need you to show me a future and a hope for my life. What happened next changed my life forever. It took me out of my life where I was a gambling addict who had lost over $500,000, allowed me to begin a new life in Christ, where I found more joy, peace, and hope than I ever knew existed. I share the stories, including where I blame God for my father's death and the call into ministry that I found in my first book called Finding Faith. I also share with you the answers to the questions that I was asking God about what is faith and how can I move mountains with it. Finding Faith has those stories and so much more. I absolutely believe it can encourage you to find faith in your life today. Finding Faith by me, the new John Simmons, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble website, Walmart. You can also pick up a copy signed by me over at newjohnsimmons.com.
Sports and entertainment, business and politics, health and wellness, all on WGNU, the talk of St. Louis.
Want to start writing or add to God's sentence for your life? Want to learn what that means? Visit newjohnsimmons.com for articles and videos that can help you find a future and a hope for your life today. Now, back to the new John Simmons Show.
We're back. You're listening to the new John Simmons Show. We've run out of minutes.
We don't have a lot of time left.
I know we don't. You got to talking in the last segment, and as normal with Kevin, as his teacher gift allows, he continues to add to the conversation lovingly in his gift.
That's true.
So tonight's show, talking about the obedience experiments and talking about some psychology reasons why we do these things. Let's jump right back into the conversation for those of us who have stayed with us. If not, head over to newjohnsimmons.com. You can catch the first half of this conversation, or the first 3/4 rather. So I want to say something that Stanley Milgram brought up in his experiment. He says that his experiment and those like it reveal a flaw in human behavior, that we have an ability to suspend our moral values. And I would say that's true. And he said, but the critics of this experiment, and I think that you would probably land in this group of people who would think this, is that the moral lapse is on the experimenter because the results are biased based on the situation that they're put in.
Sort of. I think they're biased because they've already set up in my opinion, a system of submission. They're like, look, we're doing an experiment. We're going to pay you for your time. We just need you to do these things.
Yeah.
And they come in there and they told, look, you're just going to flip these switches. They're going to get a shock. You're going to ask some questions. We're going to pay you for your time. Will you do this? There's already been a contract. They've already established who's in charge. They've established your role, your duties, like in a job, and we're trained to submit and do our job. We come in and, look, I'm just doing my job, and this is the way that the world is designed. And so they come in and they do this kind of stuff. And now, just like in that experiment, what I like about it, though, and this is the picture of sin, is they start flipping these switches, and the shock isn't that bad, and it's fairly harmless. And as it begins to progress, these people they pretend to be getting more and more uncomfortable, more and more in pain, more and more like, please, okay, now you need to stop. Now the poor subject, this guy flipping the switches, realizes, oh, this is getting serious. This was, at first, it wasn't such a big deal. Now this is getting serious, and now I don't know what to do. I'm kind of like, I was first just playing near the water. Now I'm waist deep in it.
Yep.
And before they know it, they're at the end flipping the lethal switch, and now they're in over their heads, and they don't know what to do. It's a perfect picture of what sin can do in our lives when we submit to the devil and the devil's ways. You know, one of my favorite sayings that people say all the time about sin is that it'll take you farther than you want to go. It'll keep you longer than you want to stay, and it'll cost you more than you want to pay. And John can even test it in his own gambling. That, look, it just started out just a few poker games.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden he's staying way longer than he wanted to stay, and now he's hawking things and running up his credit cards, and then all of a sudden he loses everything, and he paid a price way more than what he wanted to pay.
One of these experiments that I saw recently was on a Netflix movie that came out called Dishonesty, another documentary where they did several more social experiments, but this time they added something from the Bible. I'm going to play a clip from this show on Netflix called Dishonesty. If I can press the button. And it plays. Come on, thing.
And we asked about 500 undergrads to try and recall the 10 Commandments.
We asked people to write down as many of the 10 Commandments as they could remember, and then we put them in a situation where they could cheat with the matrix task.
How many of them do you think recalled all 10 Commandments? 0, that's right. By the way, they invented lots of interesting ones. What happened after people tried to recall the 10 Commandments, even if they were unsuccessful? Nobody cheated. It wasn't as if the people who remembered more commandments, the people who are presumably more religious, cheated less, and the people who remembered almost none of them cheated more. Nobody cheated.
It didn't matter what religion the participants had. You know what the 10 Commandments are about. They are about a moral code. They are about proper behavior. And just knowing that and being reminded of that decreases dishonesty.
That is amazing to me. So they did another social experiment where all they'd done this test where they'd gotten people to cheat simply because they thought they were getting away with it.
Yeah.
They did the exact same test that everybody had failed. Hundreds of thousands of people who had taken this test.
Sure.
They all cheated because of that. And then they just put the 10 Commandments and asked them to write them down. And all of a sudden, no one was cheating on this test anymore. Simply because the thought of the 10 Commandments brought a different mindset to their brain before they took this test where everybody else was cheating. And so to me, this is fascinating. Fascinating that our morals can change simply by thinking about the Bible, simply by thinking about God's word. Even if you're not religious, as they said, you know, it didn't matter if you were an atheist or a Christian. Just the thought of the Ten Commandments made you want to cheat less. That is incredibly powerful stuff from God, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, obviously God's word is powerful. And in going back to the example of that I was given before, so you're thinking these guys have given a choice. There is a fear of getting it wrong and failing.
Yeah.
Or a fear of breaking this moral, because I believe that everyone has a moral center. Like God's given everyone a conscience. Everyone knows the difference of right and wrong, whether they want to admit it or not. You can even see that in young children. Like they know when they've done something they shouldn't. They'll look at you like, oh, I hope you didn't see that. Like they know. And so here are you going to submit to God's way, where God says, you know, they feel really dirty about cheating, about the Ten Commandments, and that overpowers their worry about failing and not getting them all right, which I find that there's this conscience that could not override, that they were submitting to their conscience, they were submitting to God's, making God happy over their own flesh of cheating and let's get this all right and look good.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's cool.
I think it's incredibly cool because not only does it prove that God's word like influences people, like on a you know, just like conviction. We think about, well, God's not real; He's not talking to us today. His word is real. They just asked them to write the Ten Commandments. They didn't show them a list. They didn't speak it out to them, and all of a sudden, just the thought of God's word made people act differently.
Yeah,
this to me is such an amazing truth that God is real. Yeah. He's talking to us today. He wants us to follow Him, and you know, we can overcome the moral authority of people who might be telling us to do bad things or do, you know, even if it's the devil in our ear, and you know, we can overcome these through the power of the Holy Spirit and conviction and just, you know, growing a deeper relationship with God. We've run out of time tonight, Kevin. I could continue to talk about this.
Well, just even the side is got to throw in that even more explanation why the devil wants the Ten Commandments out of the courthouse, out of schools, out of any public view.
You read it, you're changing your behavior.
Just having that before your eyes can actually alter a person's behavior.
Yeah,
and the devil knows that.
Yeah.
That's why the devil does everything he can to remove it.
I want to thank everybody for watching with us over on Facebook. Cindy saying hi, Mike Rayland saying good evening. I appreciate all of you guys tuning in tonight, and everybody who's been listening on your radios. We'll be back again with you soon. Until then, for integrity, for Kevin, and for myself, the new John Simmons, we want to thank you. Don't forget to head over to newjohnsimmons.com and follow us on Facebook. Until next time, guys, we pray you discover a future and a hope for your life today.
Thanks for listening to the new John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network. To replay this episode or listen to past episodes, look for the new John Simmons Show podcast on your mobile device. Stay connected to the show. Read the latest news, blog posts, and see behind-the-scenes photos by following @New John Simmons on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you would like to learn more about how you can begin to write God's sentence for your life, or join a growing community of people who are finding passion, vision, and faith for their lives, please visit newjohnsimmons.com. Until next time, we pray you discover a future and a hope for your life today.